Hello folks, if you follow the World of Warcraft news at all, by now you will know that the first War Within Mythic Plus season did not land all that well with many fans, which means that a lot of people have been looking forwards to the next Season 2, which will likely be launching at the end of this month, with a bit of a mixture of hope and fear. Well, if you are a fan of Mythic Plus, this week Blizzard have released a major update, and this will very likely set the pace for that season. The big question is it going to be a successful pace? Well, do make sure to stay tuned, as I'm going to be sharing all of the important details and giving you my personal take on the changes and how the season is shaping up. And also, for fans of Delve, there's going to be a little bit of good news for you as well. Before that, of course, it is time to dive into what is happening in the live game, which honestly is still in a little bit of a lull. As today is the start of a brand new month, that also means a brand new trading post. This month marks the 2nd anniversary of the trading post, and to celebrate that event, Blizzard are allowing us to earn an extra 500 tender, taking the total to 1500. This is going to be by extending the adventure journal bar, which does mean that you are going to have to do a little bit more in-game to earn it all. But that bonus is definitely going to be needed, as this update also includes a bunch of returning items, which are going to be on some special vendors in Donegal. Meanwhile, on the main trading post itself, we have a brand new Silver Moon themed rocket mount, the Silver Moon Sweeper, and the monthly bonus for completing that trading post bar is going to be a Lunar Festival themed transmog, the ornate pink Lunar Festival attire. Sadly, that extra 500 traders tender bonus does look like it's going to be a one-off event, which is a bit of a shame. Given the price pressures from the trading post, I would personally prefer to have seen this be a permanent addition, as 1000 tender really doesn't feel enough from month to month. Also, if you're a mount collector, then you are going to want to check in on the Lunar Festival holiday, which has been updated with a brand new rocket mount, the Lunar Launcher. This uses the same animation set as the Love is in the Air rocket mount, but it has a very distinctive Lunar Festival look and feel. This mount costs 75 coins of Ancestry, which you can get by doing a bit of a world tour of the Lunar Festival Elders. If you do plan to do that world tour, I recommend getting the Tomcat Tours add-on, and I'll link to that along with a Wowhead guide to the event down below. Unlike the other holiday events, the coins of Ancestry do not disappear when the event ends, so I do suggest checking in your bank to see if you already have some lurking there. As well as all of the old world elders to visit, there are also 8 new elders which have been added to Castlegar, along with a brand new achievement for visiting them all. If you're a fan of holiday events, then I think the next week is actually going to be quite a busy time for you. Tomorrow, that's Sunday, we have the start of the Darkmoon Faire. If you're still working and ranking up your professions, then the Darkmoon Faire profession quests typically take a couple of minutes to do, and most of them will give you between 2 and 3 precious knowledge points. And on Monday, the Love is in the Air event is back as well. This was given a complete revamp last year, so I'm not expecting any major changes this year, perhaps just a new reward or two. But if you missed it last year, I do recommend giving it a visit, as the new event design was awesome. This also marks the time when you can chase the X45 Heartbreaker, one of the rarest mounts in the game. This does now have a higher chance to drop on your very first attempt per account every day, so it may well not remain rare forever. And finally, on Wednesday, we see the return of the Comp Stomp Brawl. This allows you to run the Arathi Basin Battleground against AI-controlled NPC opponents. This is a really good way for those of you who really don't like PvP to farm honour and marks of honour, which can be spent on old PvP transmogs and even mounts. Well, that's all the updates for the live game this week, so let's head over to that PTR and take a look at Blizzard's big announcement. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this update is going to change Mythic Plus forever. This was a massive update with a raft of fresh changes which are piling up on top of the updates we've already seen in Season 1 and on the PTR. In the update, Blizzard have confirmed that they have heard the feedback from players about Mythic Plus not feeling rewarding enough for the level of challenge, and also that the punishment for failure being far too high, loud and clear. Blizzard then went on to talk about how the interaction with the Delve reward system was leading to an influx of very unprepared players coming into Mythic Plus 7 and above and not having a particularly good time. And these are the two key issues that Blizzard are setting out to address in these updates. First of all, Mythic 0 dungeon rewards are getting buffed to now drop champion track gear from both the dungeon bosses and the weekly vault. But this is coming at the cost of the return of the weekly lockout. They're also going to be buffing Mythic 0 difficulty a bit to match those rewards a little better. Now, I personally remain at a loss to understand why Mythic 0 did not launch like this in Season 1. When Season 1 launched, Mythic 0 frankly felt pointless to do other than to check out the Mythic mechanics. I was also very surprised at the time at the lack of difficulty in both Heroic and Mythic 0 dungeons. It really felt to me like they had completely reverted the Dragonflight Season 4 dungeon changes at those lowest difficulty. For Mythic Plus 2 through to Mythic Plus 10 dungeons, the scaling factor between each level is being reduced from 10% to 7%. Now, to give you a little bit of context in that change, back in most of Dragonflight, the jump was 8%. So the end result of this change is going to be to reduce the gap down to a level that is slightly less than what we experienced during Dragonflight. Now, if you follow my updates, you will note that one of the issues with Mythic Plus that I had identified in Season 1 was that excessive gap between the levels, which was happening not just at plus 12, but also at the lower levels as well. So this, in my view, is a very, very welcome change. Now, a lot is going to depend on how much Blizzard buffs Mythic 0. They could just scale it up so that a plus 10 ends up being unchanged in difficulty. But that, I think, would lead to a far too large of a gap between Heroic and Mythic 0. So I suspect that the buff is not going to be quite so severe. Generally, the scaling factor between levels is much more impactful to our experience of Mythic Plus than changes to the Mythic 0 baseline. So my expectation is that this is going to pull the plus 8 to plus 10 difficulty down a fair bit. The only remaining question then is how much. Overall though, closing that gap between each level should smooth out dungeon progress a lot. And that, I hope, will avoid that feeling that many of us got in Season 1 of hitting a wall that was impossible to overcome even with the gear that was dropping. But that's not the only changes we're getting. Affixes are also getting some very major changes. The rotating Xal'atath's bargain affix is being moved up from starting at a plus 2 to now start at plus 4. And the fortified and tyrannical are also being moved up to start at a 7 instead of a 4. By far, the best news of all though is that Challenger's Peril is being moved up from plus 7 to plus 12, where it's now becoming the curse part of the Xal'atath's Guile affix. That change also means that the 10% enemy health buff for Xal'atath's Guile is also being removed, with that increased death penalty now becoming the only way to offset the removal of the rotating affixes at plus 12 and above. Overall, I think that there is a lot to like about these changes, as they're going to make the lower levels of keys a lot more friendly for folks who are transitioning in from delves or from open world content. And for those players who don't push up to plus 12s, the removal of Challenger's Peril is a major win. Challenger's Peril was an affix that quite simply should never have been allowed to go live. And really, for the folks who do plus 12, I do think that Blizzard still needs to look at finding a more fun way to add extra challenge there. All Challenger's Peril achieved was to increase toxicity via quitting and pogs. But at least now, for more mainstream players who are looking to do their weekly keys, they're not going to have to deal with it. And finally, Blizzard are also tweaking the gear drops a little, mainly to slightly buff them at some of the lower levels of keys, with most notably Gilded Crests now dropping from +7s and above. I think it's worth keeping in mind that these changes are also landing on top of the other recently announced changes, such as increased crest drops, lower penalties for depletes, and cheaper crest upgrades. Add in the other changes that Blizzard have been making to reduce the number of interrupts and crowd control stops that are required, along with fewer tank busters, and this all adds up to create the potential for Season 2 to feel a lot more rewarding and attainable for most mainstream Mythic Plus fans. As I've already mentioned though, this does still depend on that all-important baseline tuning along with the class tuning, but all the indications are that the World of Warcraft development team have learned a bit of a lesson from Season 1. If I was to give them any feedback though, it would be to take another look towards Dragonflight Season 3 and its success as a template to drive that tuning. When it's all said and done, I do personally feel a lot more optimistic about Season 2 than I have been up to now. And if you were someone who bounced off Season 1 but have enjoyed Mythic Plus in the past, I am going to recommend that you give it another try. We cannot be 100% sure until it actually does go live, but all of the signs are positive enough that I think it is at least worth giving it that chance. While I personally focus on the more mainstream 8 to 10 Mythic Plus range, there are a couple of other updates for higher end players as well. First of all, the previously announced Keystone Legend Award for hitting 2850 is now going up to require 3000 instead, which I think is going to work out at doing all 13s in time. This will continue to award the new mount, the Enterprising Shredder Tank. There's also a bit of a major change to the other part of the reward for that achievement, which was that keys of +12 and above would never drop below a 12. This is now being removed from that achievement and turned into a completely separate system, which is also being substantially expanded. Under the new system, if you complete all dungeons within time at any level from +12 upwards, this will guarantee that the keys will not drop below that level. For example, if you do all 13s in time, that will become the new floor for your keys. Progress to do all 14s in time, and then the floor will raise to a 14. This change, I think, is a major improvement. While the knowledge that your key would never drop below a +12 was very much a nice to have, for players doing, for example, 15 and above, it probably wasn't going to have much impact on them, whereas now it's going to become the gift that just keeps on giving. But why should more mainstream players still have to deal with depletion? Personally, I would have liked to have seen this reward start at the +10 level. +10s are for more mainstream players often the stretch target that they focus on for their weekly keys, and would likely result in many more players who reach that level being willing to help more of their guildmates and raid team out to also push for some more weeklies at that +10 level. It's already quite common in raiding guilds for Mythic Plus pushers to help their guildmates with weekly depletes for gear. The problem is that once you deplete that key, you can't help anyone else out, and with the dungeon size limited to 5 players, basically that means the most people you can help out is 4. However, if your key stayed at a +10, then you would be equipped to help out a lot more than just that one group of 4. And finally, on the Mythic Plus front, there is one bonus bit of good news. If you're one of the multitude that's looking forwards to that Minecat RP before the final boss in Darkflame Cleft, well, the bad news is that it's not going away. But the good news is that it is getting a major update to make it a lot faster, and also hopefully a bit easier to do. Blizzard have also made some updates to graveyard spawn points across many of the Mythic Plus dungeons to reduce runbacks a bit. And yes, this does include a spawn point after that Minecat RP. While these changes are not a magic bullet, and I do continue to maintain my prediction that for most players, once they achieve their goals for Darkflame Cleft, it is likely to become a bit of a dead key, I am hopeful that this will make the process of getting to that goal a bit less painful at least. And finally, if you are a Delver, you are not completely left out as well. As with this week's PTR build, the amount of Gilded Crests that doing a level 11 Delve drops has been increased from 6 to 7. Okay, that's not exactly earth-shattering, especially with the weekly cap of 3 drops, but that does mean that the weekly amount of crests you can get from delves is going up from 18 to 21. One thing to keep in mind with this is that once you upgrade your gear to where you have no more use for rune crests, it's also going to be a lot cheaper for you to upgrade those rune crests to gilded crests. And along with the increased level of rune crests that are dropping in delves, you can expect to get decent amounts of gilded crests, especially in the second half of the season. As well as maxing out your hero track gear, these crests can also be spent on crafted gear, which at rank 5 quality ends up just one upgrade step away from the maximum possible item level of myth track gear. What this likely means for delvers is that while your gear progress is going to be a lot slower than a Mythic Plus player or a Mythic Raider, when you get towards the end of the season, you may well find that gap shrinking quite a bit. Especially, and this is just speculation on my part and not something that is confirmed, if Blizzard was to remove that weekly cap on Gilded Crest from delves when they remove the caps in PvP and Mythic Plus elsewhere. I'm certainly going to be keeping my fingers crossed that we will see that cap removal later in the season. No matter what happens though, once we add in last week's review of the renowned track for raiding, this is all combining to mean that Season 2 is going to feel very different from Season 1 for pretty much every player in the game, with the accumulated changes having the potential to have a similar impact to that what we saw in Dragonflight Season 2 with the introduction of their gear upgrade system. I'm sure it won't be perfect, but Season 2 does look to me like it has the potential to have a lot more staying power than Season 1 did. And that's it for this week. I would love to hear your thoughts on Season 2. Are you looking forward to diving in to experience all of the new changes? Or are you still too burned out from Season 1? Let me know in the comments down below. At the time I'm recording this video, I have just hit the all-important 1000 subscriber mark. A very important milestone for any new channel like mine. And I would just like to say a huge thank you to everyone who has helped me to get there, be it by subscribing, commenting, or just watching my videos. Without your support, I would not have got this far, and I'm looking forward to continuing to build out my channel in the coming year. Now, if you have not yet already subscribed, I am only just over that line, which means I could very easily fall back below. And you can help to prevent that happening by hitting that subscribe button right now. This will also help to ensure that you find out whenever I release a new video. As well as these weekly updates every Saturday, I also release a bunch of guides, reviews and previews on all things World of Warcraft, and I have a ton of new stuff in the pipeline that you'll be seeing very soon now. And if you've enjoyed this video, then do make sure to hit that like icon to let me and the YouTube algorithm know that I'm on the right track. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.